Welcome to episode whatever. I don't know what episode we're on right now, but welcome back to our podcast, to our YouTube channel. Larry and I are here today. We were talking about 2 minutes beforehand because we had no idea what we wanted to talk about today, and we figured,
rarely do.
Yeah, we usually prepare right beforehand, so all this great content comes totally off the cuff. I thought today Larry had the idea that we would talk a little bit about opportunity. And what we mean by that is, from a professional standpoint, you can find so many different opportunities either to start your own law firm, move into another part of the law, leave the law, and the same is true for general entrepreneurship. But oftentimes these things arise unexpectedly, and it's up to you as the individual to recognize those chances and those opportunities and try and make the most of them. In addition, a lot of people see problems as problems, but I once read a famous philosopher who said there are no such thing as problems, there are only opportunities. So a lot of what we're going to talk about today is when you're looking at your problems or your opportunities, you really have to pounce on those because those could be the life changers that really set the course for your career. And I think for the two of us, Larry, we started both obviously off in general law practice, litigation, standard course. We worked for a law firm, then we had our own law firm. And then some of these chance opportunities and oftentimes problems arose, which got us to where we are today. And I think a lot of people who start their own businesses can identify with that. And those that want to start them may have not taken advantage of certain chances, and maybe they have those in the future.
Sure, there's so much there, but let's back up. When you want to talk about chance opportunities, that's a very loaded term. So let's start with the first thing. Career opportunities, professional opportunities, are those just chance, or can you create your own opportunities? And that's, it's not meant to be like a yes or no, maybe it's a bit rhetorical, but that thing really fascinates me, not just professionally, but outside, just generally in life. How much influence or impact can a person have over opportunities that are presented or present themselves? Or is it up to chance, or is it somewhere in the middle? What do you think?
I could think of a lot of different people that I come into contact with on a day-to-day basis. Whether it's my friends who have their own law practices, the people who coach my kids in baseball, people that we deal with on the idea financial side of this business that are having trouble in their own businesses, whatever the case may be. One of the biggest mistakes that many people make is they have a desperate need to start something or search for that opportunity. Oftentimes, these things happen just when you're doing the right thing within your own business. Those things present themselves to you. So by way of example, when you think about what we have done throughout our career, when I first started my own law practice, I was moving along just fine with the law firm that I was working for, but there were a couple of cases that came about that I recognized were there for the taking for me, but I had to have the guts to go off and do it myself. But that didn't happen because I was searching for it. It just came about by the regular course of the business that I was doing. I recognized the opportunity, I took the risk, and I went ahead and I did it. And I think that risk element is something that people sometimes get nervous about, but that's one of the biggest parts of starting your own thing.
Well, that is part of it, but you already, if you're already in a position where you're running your own firm, by default, you have wider opportunities that present themselves, because if you're reporting to work at 9 o'clock and you have a structure and you have things that a to-do list basically that's given to you, you're kind of buried there and you don't have those opportunities to go out, or maybe you're not in the same position where those opportunities will present themselves. So I've always thought that a lot of it has to do with where you are in the first place, and that will either limit or increase the amount of opportunities that either present themselves or you can create, or somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, if you look around just in our business here today, like even the folks who are behind the cameras right now, people who have started working with us and found a niche within the business and have started to create their own opportunities within the business. And I see that throughout Idea Financial and LevelEsq. And the hope is that they'll see this as a springboard to be able to start their own business and to do their own thing. But like I said, a lot of this is predicated on being dedicated, working hard, and it sounds like a lot of platitudes, but it's true, and also being ethical within the work that you do. it's also about making smart choices. And I can be the first one to admit that some of the risks that you and I have taken, I've questioned along the way. You know, there's things that we do today that I think to myself, what if I would have not done that? What if I would have stayed with the law practice? How would my life be today? Would the stress level be lower? Would I be better off? I don't know the answer to those questions, but it's sort of like the look back and seeing what it is that you're doing now versus what the opportunity was then that makes for an interesting discussion.
Yeah. When we were getting ready for this today.
It's hot in here, by the way, man.
Is it?
Yeah, I don't know why this room is so warm today.
It's always, when we were getting ready for this discussion today, ironically, I started thinking, all right, because we were in the conference room downstairs with Santiago.
Right.
And we were brainstorming about what we were going to speak about today. And that in and of itself sparked a thought in me. It's like part of what we're talking about here has to do with creativity. And, I joked with Santi afterwards, like, well, you just witnessed our creative process. He's like, yeah, man, it's kind of like, writers, in a writer's room for SNL. Like, there's a deadline. You've got to come up with something, and it's got to be good. And we were in there. We just kind of went off of one another, like we do in a lot of different contexts, and we created something there on the spot.
I don't know if it's going to be any good.
We'll find out.
We'll see.
In about 30 minutes. But we created something there on the spot. It was a concept. We kind of pulled it out of thin air, and we went with it.
Right.
And I think that the creativity element is a big part of opportunity. It's a big part of perhaps changing your course in life. That's an element of is that you can be creative and you can impact what opportunities present themselves by being creative. And I think if you look at Level Insurance, for example, that is something that we created.
Yeah.
That opportunity didn't present itself. It wasn't.
Well, it did. Yes, it did.
There were elements of it that did, but I think the genesis of it was the creative process.
Well, no, but let's think back to when we first did this. I do think that it presented itself, and we took advantage of it. You might not even realize it, but I think that's exactly what happened because there were some chance elements, but then, you have to take those things and you have to actually work with them.
Break down the chance elements.
So you think about it, when I first started working in the office where you were, we didn't know each other, but we got to know each other, and you recognized what I did for a living, which you didn't do the same thing, and just watching what I did on a day-to-day basis, you had the thought, well, what if you could de-risk a little bit of what you're doing? I was only 30 years old. I was spending my own money on my own cases, and there's a lot of risk, even on a small case at that age. And you had the idea to think, okay, well, maybe we could find a way to de-risk that a little bit.
So you're right. That's chance number one, I guess.
But most people would have that conversation, and they would just be like, oh, that sounds cool, and go back to doing whatever it is that they regularly do. But at that moment, I think we both realized, well, shit, there's something that is there that we can try and figure out together. And then we started to take that idea or that chance moment and mold it into an opportunity that has now lasted for more than a decade and has insured, God, like hundreds of millions of dollars worth of legal cases.
So that's chance, right? So there's some element of unpredictability and probability, however you want to call it, destiny even. We met, and we started working together. There's the creative process where, sure, we had this idea, but we had to flesh it out, and that took a lot of effort and, again, more creativity and thinking and analysis. And then what you're bringing up lastly is execution. And I think all three of those elements have to be explored to get a full picture of opportunities and everything that goes into it. But the execution part I don't know which is the most important. Maybe that is, because perhaps there's a lot of people with a lot of ideas who chance never works out to make it more viable. But even if chance and viability come together, you don't have the skills or the personality or the support or even the opportunity because of life circumstances or money to actually be able to execute. And all of those things, if you break down everything that we've done, I see all those elements working together. And sometimes, right, so you have, and this is another part of it, you have one opportunity that turns out to be viable and to be successful. How many others are in the graveyard, so to speak?
Tons.
Of ideas that we've had, things that we've tried. So I think to take those risks and pursue new opportunities, you have to be willing to accept the fact that so many more are not going to work out, and that can't deter you.
Well, you also have to accept the fact that there's a very strong likelihood that whatever you're doing is going to be a total failure, because most things that people start don't succeed. Successful people are often looked at and lauded for their great success, but what they don't talk about is that most of those people have had immense amounts of failure along the way before they got to that moment of success. Nobody just like opens up the door, puts their sign up, and all of a sudden they're wildly successful. They have to go through a process where they are willing to accept failure after failure after failure before they are a success. And what we have done, I mean, the amount of failure that we have experienced over the course of over 10 years is way greater than the amount of success. And I mean, it all starts with when we first had the idea for Level, how many different insurance companies told us no thank you, how much money we spent in going to, whether it was New York or Boston or Georgia or somewhere in Florida, sitting with these people, taking time, preparing, and ultimately them saying, you know what, that's great and all, but we're not interested. And so all those failures that nobody really hears very much about lead to the end result that people actually understand. But no one really gets the fact that if you're going to be a success, you will have to understand failure and really accept it.
I think that if we talk about success, those are much larger notions of saying, all right, here's an idea for a new enterprise or a new business, and what does it take to get that business off the ground and going? I think we learned a lot, and we still are learning a lot when it comes to that. I think even for people who aren't interested in pursuing something like that, the same lessons apply just day to day. So for example, how often, I'd say this is almost daily, if not weekly, you and I are on the phone, emailing, LinkedIn, whatever it is, trying to form new partnerships. A big part of what we do day to day is business development. And we've learned that out of how many calls we're going to make and different opportunities we pursue with different partners, different relationships, it's the same principle just applied to our day to day. It's like, all right, this might be something worthwhile. Let's set a meeting with them. Let's set a call with them. Let's see what's there. The vast majority of the time that stuff doesn't work, but it doesn't deter us from continuing to try.
It gets frustrating, though. I mean, that's one of the things I think that makes people who have the desire to have their own business or the desire to do their own thing, it makes them very frustrated and can lead to, giving up.
Yeah.
Because the no's are far more numerous than the yes. And like you just said, whether it's business development, trying to get a new product off the ground, whether it was in litigation, during a moment of doubt during a deposition or in a court hearing, all that stuff makes it very difficult to get back up if you've been knocked down and continue to do what you're doing. And it takes a special personality to be able to handle that stuff. And I mean, being totally honest and transparent, of course, there are many times throughout the course of our career together where I felt frustrated or I felt like we couldn't succeed at something. And, the two of us will talk it out and whoever's feeling down will try to get the other person back up. But it is a long process and it can be extremely difficult. Hopefully the end of it is success, but it is marred in tons and tons of failure.
It is. I remember very clearly one of our associates who we've been working with for years, Greg Miller, who's been always instrumental in Level Insurance from the beginning. I remember the three of us were together and I won't mention any names, but we were exploring a pretty significant opportunity. And we had traveled to another city, and it seemed like it was going to go very well. It seemed like we were going to have a done deal. We flew back home. We were feeling very good about it. And then we got a call randomly from this person who we were working with on the other side. And out of nowhere, that person said, no, we don't want to do this with you guys. And I remember being so personally frustrated because I thought we had it in the bag. I thought we were good to go. I was feeling really optimistic about it. And I shared my frustration with Greg. And I remember him telling me, he's like, listen, if you don't feel like this a lot, then you're just not trying hard enough. You have to get used to the feeling of people saying no a lot more than they're going to say yes. And if you don't feel like this a lot, then you're just not trying hard enough. So it's a good sign that you're feeling that because you're passionate, you care, you're going after these things. And most of the time they're not going to work out. But that's just someone's way of telling you that you're actually trying hard enough.
It's a very good.
It was great
point.
advice.
It is good advice, and I think for anybody who's trying to start a business, it's really important to understand that if you're gonna give up every time somebody says no, you might as well just throw in the towel and not even bother, because the no's are gonna be constant. And then it's the same thing with Idea and Level. Besides like Level Insurance, as we've been working on Idea Financial, part of that is you got to get financing. You got to get banks to work with you. You have to have funds that want to provide you with money. You have to get good employees. All these things are processes that you go through, and it's not always an easy thing to get these things done. The people who work with you and for you just have the expectation that you're just going to do it because that's your job. But the constant frustration of having to go through person after person, that making it difficult for you to get to your end game can be tough. It can be a tough thing to deal with.
Fairly recently, as some of our senior managers begin to work with us on these things, on the business development, on the finance side, the capital markets, they've now started to experience more no's than yeses, and they're part of the process now. And I've had some very recent discussions with them, and things don't work out, and you go down a path, and it's a dead end. And I've discussed that with them. I said, listen, what I've learned and what you have to do when those things happen is it's not always about reaching that end goal and getting the yes or getting the desired result. Most of the time it's not, and you have to just take that always as just more experience that you've gained. You've learned more. You learn more about a particular process. You've learned more about a particular industry. You've learned more about how to deal with the next opportunity and have a better approach. So I guess what I'm saying is, a lot of times if you're just myopically focused on the end result, you miss out on a lot of opportunities to learn while you're going through these processes. And maybe it's not always, you don't always frame something as a failure or lack of success. You say, well, I'm out here in the first place. I'm putting myself out there, and I'm learning, and I'm getting better every time I do this. Everything can be a lesson, and everything can just enhance your skill set.
Well, let me turn a little bit on the not cynical, but the realistic side of the way things are today, as opposed to the way that you're discussing them. And that is, I read a book called Not Everyone Gets a Trophy, I think it was called. And it was a book about managing younger people and millennials. Because a lot of folks, or especially younger people today, are told that, just if you try, then you're going to get a trophy, and that's good enough. Mm-hmm. But that's not realistic for life and for what you're talking about. The people who actually go that extra mile and work harder and try to beat out other people, those are the ones that are successful. But one of the issues I think that's going on in business today and in recruiting and in general is that there is a sense that if you just show up, then that's going to be enough for you to be a success. And a lot of what you've said and what I've said during this conversation is that when you show up, oftentimes you get kicked in the face and it hurts, and you got to get back up and you got to go on and you got to learn from that loss and you got to try to accomplish something later. It's that the mindset, though, of some people these days is that just being there should be enough for them to earn something more than what they actually have earned. And I think that's kind of a dangerous mindset, and it hurts business in general. And I worry about, as businesses grow and that generation continues to work through the ranks, that there could be a lull in some of the entrepreneurship if there's just the idea that if you're there, then somehow that means you've earned something.
Yeah, we've discussed this over time, and I've always referred to it as what is it, the Facebook lie, or the kind of the Facebook phenomenon, something that I wasn't really in tune with until we started building a diverse team. And it is unfair for some people to buy into this mythology that earning a fortune is easy, or it doesn't take a lot of hard work, or it's just a matter of designing an app and it's going to get purchased. And the notion, it's not so much the notion of getting lucky or being creative, it's the notion of how quick and easy it can be, right? So, all right, I think there's perhaps multiple generations of people now who buy into this mythology that fortunes are earned overnight and not with a lot of hard work and sacrifice. And you compare that to a lot of the small business owners who we work with on a daily basis, we speak with them. These are people who haven't taken a day off in decades.
Yeah, they just work. All they do is work, and that's their life's work. And that's something like, if you think about the term life's work.
That's a different narrative that perhaps was absorbed by different generations, and you compare that to a narrative that's absorbed now, and they're vastly different, and it's unhealthy.
Well, I'm 45 years old now, so I sound like an older person when I say, oh, these younger people and their expectations. I kind of sound like my parents probably did when I was that age. But I'm not trying to generalize, because we have a lot of people that work with us who are in that generation and are hard workers. They're going to be tremendous success stories because they understand hard work. But one of the things that we've been talking about here is that many people don't realize the failures that you have to go through in order to get to success. And the idea that you walk in the door and you should just be handed something without doing anything to prove yourself to the company that you work for, I think is a very bad mindset. And I always go back, again, I'm not going to name names, but I go back to somebody who worked with us at the early part of Idea Financial, who he was in his 20s, and he sat down with you and he was talking about his career trajectory. This guy hadn't built anything, had never done anything. And he told you he wanted to be a millionaire by the time he was 30.
Not wanted to, that he must
needed to be. He needed to be a millionaire by the time he was.
I must be a millionaire by the time
and
I'm 30.
I think he was like 28 when he said that. And his idea of being a millionaire was us awarding him a bunch of stock in our company just because he showed up that day. Obviously, he doesn't work here anymore and hasn't in years. But that idea that he should just become a millionaire because he has to by the time he's 30, yet he's done nothing to produce in the world. He's done nothing to offer value to the world. It was just he was there, and therefore he should be a millionaire, is a ridiculous mindset. But I don't blame him. It's likely the way that he was raised that made him feel that way, that he was entitled and that he should just walk in and get anything that he wants. I'm a big believer that, and maybe it's because I grew up in a household where my parents were divorced and that we didn't have a whole lot of money growing up, and I had to claw and fight for everything that I've ever had in my life without any real support in the back end, that I just feel that you make the most of yourself as a person if you produce your own results, and then the success follows. Not that the success should be first and then you produce the results. That's just how I believe the flow should be. And people who operate in that way, I think, feel much better about themselves as they get that success, as opposed to those who think it should just be handed to them.
Well, I think that people who think that opportunities will just be handed to them ultimately will not achieve much measure of success. And I think it brings us back full circle to what we're discussing. If part of this narrative or part of your philosophy is that opportunities are just going to show up and it's not going to take much to realize them, well, that's, I think you're going to find you'll be very disappointed if that's your philosophy.
Yeah.
But if you recognize that, what is the quote you always tell me, that opportunity plus luck equals
it's opportunity. Luck is opportunity equals opportunity plus preparation equals luck, which, I mean, it's in a million different books.
Yeah.
But I got it from the 7 Spiritual Laws of Success, which is my little go-to Bible that I read whenever I'm feeling like I need to rebalance myself. But that's one of those laws, and I think it's very true. There is no such thing as, I mean, obviously, if you go out and buy a lottery ticket and you happen to get the numbers right, sure, that's like dumb luck. But luck in life is really being prepared when that opportunity presents itself.
Yeah,
and then you'd be a very lucky person, because if you're always prepared for the opportunity, then you'll be ready at the time that it strikes, and you'll be able to make the most of it.
Yeah, so I think, to bring us back full circle, it's all of these elements that we've been discussing. And if you overemphasize one, then you're missing the other pieces of the formula, so to speak. If you're just thinking that, I'm just waiting for my opportunity to come, and when it comes, it's just going to show up and change my life, that's a little bit naive. If you think that if you're just a creative person, you have great ideas, and that'll be enough, you're probably missing other pieces of the puzzle. But if you, break down all the elements and you devote equal opportunity to all of those, or at least equal respect, I think it can enhance the probability that you can achieve whatever you're trying to achieve, whether it's getting a new business off the ground, or it's just getting someone on the phone to try to get a conversation going or to get a referral partnership together. There's different degrees of achieving something, of achieving a goal, but I think they all rely upon the same elements.
Well, thank you very much for joining us today on the Trials and Tribulations podcast. Hope you enjoyed it. Hopefully you'll subscribe so you can hear more of Larry and I just talking about stuff. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks. Thank you for joining us. This episode was sponsored by LevelEsq.